All right. Theoretically, I'm on the internet. Let's see if that's true. I'm not sure at all if that's the case. I'm 2 minutes ahead of time. I've got some bourbon. Cheers to being on the internet. And I've got multiple screens. I've recently cleaned my room, so to speak. So I am figuring things out. Did all sorts of cleanup over my staycation, as well as made some fun and exciting videos, which hopefully are coming out, namely the Zombie Tools one. I suppose this is a topic that will come up a few times. Might as well address it now. Yes, I'm sorry to disappoint all of you who loved the homeless Viking look. I now look like I live inside. And the story behind it, yes, there is a haircut. There's a hairs here, and there's a hairs here. And commendations to the child barber, or a specialty child, not that it was a child barber who cut my hair, but a barber who specialized in cutting children's hair, cut mine and actually made it look like I have more of it than I do. So commendations. I was not expecting that. Also did not see it. It was a surprise to me. Let's see. So how do I frame this for being live on the internet? I got my hair cut, obviously, but many moons ago, my wife kind of won the bet, so to speak. She had to pass a really difficult test for the job that she has. And if she did it the first time, I said I would cut my hair. And she let it go on for another year. And it was time to pay the piper. She was really reluctant to ask me to do it because she knew I liked looking like a homeless Viking. But obviously it would have made her happy. She prefers me with short hair. I had gone on for 3 years or so since COVID began with long hair. And she had said, hey, if maybe if you trim it just a little bit, it won't look so scruffy and scraggly and terrible as it does. And so without telling her, I totally just trimmed it 3 inches and just wanted to see if she would notice. She said the same thing a couple weeks later, maybe if you just trim it, it would look okay. And I was like, I don't think that's going to help. And she's like, no, it definitely would. I'm like, yeah, it won't, because I did it weeks ago and you didn't notice. It still looked just as disheveled. So I got the haircut in combination with my son. He's 2. He had his first haircut. He sat in a fire truck. I may or may not have also sat in a fire truck next to my son. We both got our haircut at the same time. Unfortunately, the gal that cut my hair and his hair, there were 2 separate gals. They both did a great job. He wasn't squirming. He was seeing me getting my haircut at the same time. And so it didn't drive him crazy. And he was pretty quiet. And I also got my haircut. And my wife was absolutely thrilled with the outcome. She was not mad at me, and she thought it looked really good. And she is the one who has to sleep with me. So I am happy. She is happy. And that's basically the haircut. The beard as well happens because it's warm out, or it was. It's snowing right now in the spot that I live. So it was 90 degrees and then it's snowing again. And that's just, if you don't like the weather, you wait 10 minutes. That's how it goes. So anyway, now I look like I did pre-COVID, which hopefully still some of you will take me seriously and want to listen to the things I have to say about swords, despite looking as homely as I do. There we go. We can zoom in right here. That might be too much of my face, but now you can see it in all its glory. Bam, face, haircut. Hopefully that explains it. Got the haircut with the child. It was good. I'm pouring some air in the Azores. Well, cheers to you. I got to be careful. People start cheersing a little too much. Leon, hello. Good to see you. Slice of those full Bud Lights. I don't have a Bud Light. So Samurai Bird, for those of you that don't know, has very long hair as well. He's quite the rock star, and I was aspiring to be him, but I couldn't hold out. Actually, in Brazil, I thought the Azores were islands off the coast of Europe. Did you say you were in the Azores? Could be totally wrong there. Fifth. All right. I might drink a fifth. No, I won't. If I had hair, I would grow it out past my ass. Joe, you know, it gradually merges on its way down. It's falling out here and just kind of sprouting, leaving a trail on the way down there. So I still have long hair on my ass, if that makes you feel better. Though I imagine it makes all of you feel quite a bit worse. If you don't like the weather, you can move to California. There's different problems in California. So in Minnesota, it is winter 10 months out of the year, and then it takes a break for a couple of days, and then starts again, and never really stops. But there aren't poisonous snakes. The mosquitoes, while they are abundant, are usually on the small side. There's usually some cool weather, which your blood can adjust to. I don't mind it. As you might have seen, I go out and practice in basically a t-shirt for the most part when it's 40 degrees. Yeah, the air is pretty good. It's winter a lot, but there's relatively few tornadoes. There's no earthquakes. There's relatively minor flooding. A lot of the other real scary bits are abated. No poisonous snakes. That's nice. Or spiders. Sometimes there's one that comes in. Hairline looking good. I will take it, even though it's not true. Too much Conan hair before? Well, too much Conan hair before. My wife was just not a fan of my the cameras. I don't know which way my hair goes, but yes. So the camera's reversed, so I keep wanting to like straighten it the wrong way. Anyway, wife was not a fan. She also got sick of me stealing her scrunchies. Ever thought of reviewing a Canabo? This is just too close for me as well. I'm sorry, everyone. Let's back it up so you can't count my nose hairs. Have I ever thought of reviewing one? Also, thank you for the super chat. I have, but not really. Honestly, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody about blunt force trauma weapons and how they don't tend to do particularly well on my channel for views and whatnot. Not that I would mind doing one, but there are not a lot of them made, and I don't own one, but I'd certainly happily do it. It would be less cutting and smashing bottles. Minnesota spring is some real BS indeed. That is the truthiness. Nice haircut, thank you. I actually caught up with chat too before all of you could get in there and totally get me with it. So I didn't have any particular plans for the stream other than nursing my bourbon while my son is taking a nap. He will probably wake up in about an hour, so that's my plan for the stream. I released a video on zombie tools today, and so there's some things that I can add to that, which I think I will do at the beginning, since there's not enough to really make a supplementary video, but some positives that maybe are helpful to know. And then I've been working on something called a MAT score, and I can talk a little bit about that as well in the absence of other questions if they happen to pop up. So the first bit is zombie tools. There is more or less on the background. I reached out to zombie tools and I asked them, hey, I broke a thing. What do you do? What would happen if a customer reached out to you with this issue? I made it known that I made a video and intentionally broke it and that I had no expectation of getting it fixed under warranty, but was there a warranty? Was it covered? Was it not? What would happen if it was a customer? And, to give me some notes. And I think this bears mentioning because it was kind of a fun experience. They kind of kept in character of the Zombie Tools website. It was fun. They said, no, basically it's not under warranty. And if a customer intentionally abused the sword, it would also not be covered under warranty, but they would fix it. And so they offered to basically regrind some things for about $50. They call it the spa treatment. Presumably it would involve maybe putting a tip back on or some minimal reprofiling. And I might have a functional zombie-esque chopper at the end of it, which I thought was entirely reasonable given the situation. Now, there's still enough on mine where there could be a tip. I don't think it's worth me personally sending it to them because I can kind of grind a tip on myself. I don't really care that much about it, but I thought that was totally reasonable to have at least a zombie Tonto at the end of it for $50 with a reasonable grind on it. That seems an appropriate thing. And I like that they kind of kept in character. And I said, I guess that $50 doesn't include, like welding a blade back together or anything like that. And there was some mention of like, we're out of Elvin Smiths that can reforge the blade. So no. Anyway, it was lighthearted. It was fun. It was the answer I was expecting. And honestly, it was a little bit more. For $50, I thought that was very reasonable to at least take what was left and make something useful out of it. And so I guess keep that in mind. I didn't get that until after I'd already made the review and posted it, or at least made the review. I posted it today. I'd gotten those responses before today, but I already edited it, already drunk, rendered it and put it up online for members and stuff. So I didn't bother adding that additional information. But now you have it. So for what it's worth, hopefully that's cool. I'll catch up on some stuff here. Finally joined the Big Bike Club and got a Skydro. How do you like it? Hey, Bert, everyone's saying hello. Drinking is so much work. I wish I was better at it. Practice. Nice to see you. Just got a shipping notification from Krieger Historical on my Langsmesser. When it gets here, I'll shoot you a message if you would like to borrow it. Tempted. I haven't reviewed anything from Krieger. I think there's a few different armories that I reached out to, and I don't recall what Krieger's response was, but I want to say that I got one, and it wasn't indicative of sending a review sample. I think they might have offered me a discount or something like that, but I'm not 100% sure. The Highlander, not me, unless you mean I have the forehead of one, high foreheader. What's the point of having a high carbon katana if they are more brittle and it's only the edge? Well, in the event that you're needing edge retention, you're favoring that over things. Having a high carbon content sword that is more brittle presumably will be a higher Rockwell hardness at the edge. And that can mean that it will keep its edge longer and be harder for doing various slicing related tasks. So undoubtedly, a through hardened blade that you can whack into things and that rolls and that can sharpen easily and that might lose its edge relatively quickly in comparison to a differentially hardened or a very high carbon content, very brittle edge. The brittle edge, in theory, if you're good with your sword and get it where you want it to go at the fleshy bits, will last potentially longer. Also, not everyone was like great at getting through hardened blades made, and like it just wasn't possible. So, like there's a historical, cultural reason that they're done, but in terms of like in a modern application, what's the benefit of having a more brittle edge? It's I think less perhaps evident on a sword, but maybe on a knife. If you have a knife that is very brittle but very soft, but you're not prying with it, you're not slamming it into a tree and trying to stand on it, you primarily use the knife for cutting, and you're primarily able to cut the things that you intend to cut with the knife, then having a knife that holds its edge a really, really long time and preserves that edge for as long as possible may be a benefit to you. Sometimes there's some trade-offs with that. The knives are really hard to sharpen then. when you're on the field and need it sharp, you can't get it there, or it takes a really long time to do. But generally speaking, holding an edge longer, provided that you don't suffer the consequences or that the brittleness is problematic for you, can be quite helpful. Is the Claymore and other long weapons and is the Claymore and other large weapons, anti-horse weapons, horse weapon, medieval anti-vehicle weapons? They can be. I don't know. I don't necessarily study with claymores, so I can't really speak to them, and I'm not sure 100% on the historical context, but I believe if a horse came by, you'd have some reach. If you needed to move pikes out of the way, you would have reach. If you were attacked by multiple people at different ends, you would have reach and be able to move them around. And as I understand it, or I've seen them operated, they were a versatile tool for a number of things. Where they might not have stood out as great as somebody very close with a much faster weapon, and you not wearing any armor. But I think you would be able to use them perhaps as anti-flanking weapons. You may be able to use them to whack a horse down. You may be able to use them to keep distance. You may be able to use them to move shields, spikes, or something else, or just hit really, really, really hard. What's the mat score? Well, I'm glad you asked, Bird. I'll bring up this this doowacky right here. All right. So for a very long time, people have asked me, give me a score. What would you rate it at as 1 to 10? And for years I've been trying, and I suck at it, and I don't like it. And so I've been kind of dragged here kicking and screaming, but I'm trying. I'm trying to make a score that is useful, that in theory is going to give somebody a simple answer, and also simply allow people to compare many of the reviews that I've made over time, but also isn't as kind of trivial as it gets 5 stars or 4.5 stars. No, not trying to poo on anyone who does that, right? But for me, it's complicated and nuanced and hard, and it breaks my brain if I try to simplify things to give it a star rating, because there's different reasons that a person would have a sword. And hopefully some of those are reflected here in such a way that a person could use this list, separate out the things that are in it, and compare like results for the objective that they have. So I have a Google Doc. If you are a member, there is a post that I made that more or less gives you access to the Google Doc, and that's where I'll keep it for the moment, just because if you want it personally, let me know and I will send you a link, or ask one of the members, because anyone that has the link can get at it. But there's only a certain amount of feedback that I can take just at the moment. And let me go through it, because maybe it's interesting. There's a bunch of stuff and words and context here. And so before I do, more or less, I'm reviewing an individual sword. And so do bear in mind, there's a ton of variation. So if somebody looks at the MAT score, well, they're not all made pristinely in exactly the same way. So I can only review the sword that I have, and also that it's purely subjective. But I have it sorted here in such a way that it says manufacturer model. That's how most of the products that I review are broken down. Category, the vast majority will be swords, but I review knives, I review polearms, I review axes, I review other things, kitchen knives from time to time. So a way to throw in any classification, a subclass or a class, katana. So if you're looking for a katana, then there's one in here. And then I further note it down where hopefully I can get in kind of subtypes, either typology or blade geometry or something like that. And the reason is that in this blue section here, all of these things would in theory allow you to, from a drop-down menu, select the type of thing that you're looking at that I may have reviewed and put it in here. I'm kind of also debating changing this from a MAT score to a sword friend score, so to speak, and putting my name in here, but allowing other people to put it in. I just don't know how to do that really well with a Google Doc. So if any of you know like IT structure better. Anyway, MSRP, weight, blade length, there's a lot of other measurements that I capture. I maybe capture 15, 20, 30, 50 different measurements on a sword. Not all of them are in here, but weight, point of balance, blade length, give you some idea of the type of class of thing that you're looking for when you factor in the other features. Then I separate it out into intended use. And so if I zoom in here, in theory, how do I zoom in here? Why is my Google's not zooming in? It's probably hard to see. View. Zoom. All right, maybe this is a little better. I know it's boring to go over spreadsheets, so I'm sure I'm losing some of you, but hopefully this is interesting as the way I categorize swords, or as at least I see the way people buy them myself. So you have a learning tool, and people that are using their stuff in dojos and in clubs and in whatever. But if you're using it as a tool to get better at your martial art, that's one reason that I see people buy swords and use them or consume them. Competition cutting, less about getting better at the art and more about competing with a sword. Japanese style cutting is one thing. I'm not experienced in a lot of the others, so my mileage is going to vary a little bit here, but that is another reason people buy a sword, specifically with the idea of competing or even potentially testing, which is less about learning and passing the test. The other reasons people buy swords, anyway, are the apocalypse, right? And when I think of the apocalypse, this is a thing that is, I need it to last for it could be the end of days. It doesn't always have to be the zombie apocalypse, but in theory, you're going to not have the ability to do maintenance. You need minimal tools. Durability, longevity at the sacrifice of agility is generally the name of the game. But people that want something durable, and they don't care exactly how super nimble and agile it is. They want something super zombie apocalypse ready. Then there's collectors. This is more of a money play. Will it improve over time? Will it hold its value? Will I be able to sell it for more money or maybe break even? Also some element of speciality, even if it's not money, but like, is it limited? Is it special? Is it unique? Does it satiate a collector? This is very, again, personal. I can critique some of the other things, but like what you buy and buy what you like kind of thing. And then fun. This is a backyard cutter, shits and giggles, having fun. I don't need to train with it. I'm not competing with it. I don't expect it to last the apocalypse. I don't expect it to make me money. I like swords, and is it cool? That's there's that one. So I'm going to pause here, go back to chat, take a look at some stuff. Short hair Adrian Paul. I've met Adrian Paul in person. He definitely eats less burritos than I do. Well, I can't say definitely. I suspect he eats less burritos than I do. When we'll meet our great patron, Sword for Matt. I was talking to Sword for Matt earlier. He is around. He's on Sword Buyer's Guide. He's not particularly shy. Our katana is a fine light cutting, doesn't dull fast. If you can cut bottles and cartons, it probably won't chip. True. Just ordered Skydro, so whenever they ship out. Hopefully you have good experience. Hey, Matt, how's it going? Any particular reason you have seemed to shy away from Shinsakudo with interest in modern blades? Fair question. I'm not shy of them, but one, they are typically in the thousands, right? So you can sometimes find a deal on a Shinsakudo for $3,000 that are not as, potentially dubious as the pieces Kamanjo sells. But usually you're talking about a thing in the realm of thousands of dollars, and the ability to sell them is also smaller, and people aren't necessarily, they're collector, art items, I suppose. You don't whack them into the same amount of things. They're not expected to stand the same amount of durability, and nobody's offered to I don't have sponsors in the same way that I do with reproduction items. So I think Shinsakudo are beautiful. I like them. I do have some questions that hopefully at some point with the Tazando Shinsakudo ability to make, I'm kind of pondering forking out some money and having a custom one made and documenting the experience. But that's still a very expensive sword, even for me, despite the fact I may have many of them. I think they're awesome, but they're harder to invest in and know what you're getting. And I'm still learning in that area. And fewer of them come up for sale. And that means I have less opportunity to kind of play the field. And it's just a higher buy-in to sit at that table. So you don't see them as much, in contrast with modern high-end blades like the Rick Barretts and Howard Clarks and American Smiths or Smiths outside of Japan. I'm a little bit more comfortable with, if I buy into it, what am I going to be able to get out of it? Am I going to lose my shirt? And I don't have the same familiarity when it comes to Shinsakudo. I'd love to play with them. I think they're beautiful, and I'd love to elaborate more on them, but it's just not, it's tough to get into, I guess. Anathar. Hopefully that answers your question, by the way, Hunter. And thank you for asking it. It's a good one. A little late in Germany, wanted to say hi. I received my custom Metzer Falchion from Krieger Historical on Friday. Had a sweet weekend. I'm glad people seem to like them. Is 1090 and T10 the same? Not in theory. The thing is, there's one school of folks that say you have a bin of steel that Chinese forges make stuff out of, and then they advertise whatever they think is going to make you buy it. And there's some dishonesty there. But is it made out of 1045, T10, 1095, 1060, or some other thing? Hard to say. But in theory, T10 and 1090 are different steels. what makes them different, I don't know that I can necessarily articulate what that is, but they are, in theory, different things. Do you have chickens? Do you plan on owning chickens? I recently found you can now send live chickens in the mail. It's a very odd question. Honestly, I wouldn't mind having chickens. I live a little close to a road, but I've had some folks in the city that I live in raise chickens, and it seems like a fun thing to do. And you can keep them outside, and they don't have to be indoor folks. And they lay eggs, and it might be kind of fun for kids. And I have a spot where, in theory, I could do it, and I have a spot where the chickens may be able to graze. So I have not seriously given it any consideration, but I would. Now I am. Thanks. Thank you? Or thanks. Like I'm not sure. Now I have to think about it. Let me drink to forget. Cheers, everyone. So it's a sword analysis chart. Cool. So how far behind on chat am I? Not terribly. Yes. I will send you a link, Bert, if you're, I will get you a link. Will you do a destruction test on a katana from Swords of Northshire? I've already done one. I would happily do one again, but I don't think they're keen on sending me one. I've made overtures to work with Swords of Northshire a few different times, but I haven't, like, something is stalled or hasn't moved forward. So I'd happily do one again, but I have reviewed one and pushed it to failure. Answering questions. Titties. Tungsten, maybe? Oh, Bird got it. I'm not good. Matthew, how are things? I'm looking to buy a Tanto. Have you ever used or owned a Hanwei, Tsunami, or Tori Tanto? Not the Tori, but the Tsunami Tanto I have. I've owned the Great Wave, and I believe the Tsunami Tanto, and a few of the, like, 1990s first things Hanwei does. And I think Tanto are generally, there's just not a lot of people that make Tanto. Bugay, Hanwei, and they're come out of the same forge, tend to do it. I would venture a guess that Evolution Blade Motahara can, depending on how deep your budget is. But those are the folks that make Tanto that I think do a pretty solid job in the reproduction realm. Everyone else kind of makes like a broken off piece of a katana, or it doesn't always look right. But Tanto can be a little less expensive too, depending on budget, because some of the Hanwei Tanto are like $700 or $800. And if you contact Pavel Bulf or maybe Rado Swords, there may be some Tanto that exist that are, probably quite a bit more expensive than that, but also quite a bit more interesting. Prismic is another guy who used to make really awesome Tanto. I'm not sure if he's still kicking them out or not. He posted more on SBG, and some of my old videos might contain how to contact him, but he also made a very affordable and just absolutely beautiful Tanto. Zise makes a really nice one. I have not seen Zise's. Good call. Tanto. Yeah, a lot of the mass production companies out of China seems to make Tanto that are, I don't know, they don't Tanto as good as their katana. I guess I'll put it that way. All right. Anyway, the next category that I have on the mat score, and just as a side note, if any of you, I know there's a few other creators in here, if this is useful to you, you can have it and make it your own. I'd love if there was a way to make a Google Doc where people, like, it wasn't a mat score, but like a Sword Friend score, and people put in their own thing. If you want to use it in between, if you want to modify it, make it your own, have at it. This was just my not my first draft, certainly, but what I could come up with that was useful. But aesthetics is the next question the next thing that I have. So past intended use, how the thing looks. And this is general styling to how unique it is, the materials that are used, and then the fitment, right? So how it looks and some of the features on it, I guess is how I would boil that down. So styling, the recent Zombie Tools one that I put out is a great example of styling. It has a kind of a particular style that is commensurate with the audience that it's going after and the task at hand. So I would probably give it reasonably high marks for styling, given what its intent is. And that's it. It's not just if I like it or not. I have to factor in, because it's my score or my thoughts on styling, if I think it's cool and if I think it fits with what it's going for. Uniqueness is another one. A lot of mass production swords don't stand out. And Hanwei, Skydro, Dragon King, some of those stand out as unique models, where if I see it in an eBay listing with a shitty cell phone photo, I can say, like, that's a Hanwei Kame Katana. And I know that color of red. I haven't seen it on another side. I can see the fittings are unique and particular to that brand. And so at least I know it's a model, maybe one of thousands, but I know it's at least that model. A lot of katana, though, it's hard to say what model they are, let alone like what vendor, because they tend to draw from some of the same parts bins. So uniqueness is not a strength there. On the reverse side, you may be dealing with maybe I'll get a chance to review like a multi-bar pattern welded Viking style sword, and I'm sure I'll have very kind things to say about it, or at least the grip. But it may, I may get a chance. Many of the swords I've reviewed are one of a kind, can be picked out. If you look close at them, they're unique and onto themselves. So the uniqueness, I think, is a factor that pulls in there. I do have a document that explains kind of what my thoughts are around each of them, but hopefully hearing it in my words is helpful. Materials, are the materials a quality material? That doesn't mean it's a bad sword, but if you see really, really cheap, inexpensive materials, that's going to factor into the aesthetic. And sometimes, like vice versa, you might have a sword made of gold, but it may be a terrible sword. And then fitment, how does it all come together? To me, that's an aesthetic thing. It's also a build quality thing, but all the little nuances of things like that, how they come together, are they where they're supposed to be? I do want to separate out. I could see a European sword with a big, enormous gap in the crossguard, and it could still get amazing points for fitment. Some of that is purely subjective. Some of it isn't, though. If the crossguard is cockeyed, if the grip is screwed on wrong, that's not intentional. or historic. It might be intentional, but probably not historic. Probably also not intentional. Jumping back over here. Are you planning on reviewing Itchin stuff? I would especially like to see how much abuse Scarlet Sunrise can take. I don't know what that is. So I probably would. I know there's been some thoughts about sending me some anime-esque swords, so I'm going to assume it's one of those. Mini katana, we go back and forth a little bit. I haven't gotten anything from them in a minute, but it's possible. I may review some anime swords if that's what that is, and then you'll have a good idea of what to expect from the vendor that makes it. Bird, yes, you can use it. The mats. So just to separate out, there's measurements. Like I grabbed stuff for the weapon dynamics computer, so you can see the weapon dynamics computer and how some sorts fit in there. I grab historical Japanese measurements from the Munmachi, Hamanchi, and near the Kisaki, and I measure other things for Japanese style swords, so you can have an idea of what to expect. But this is just, of the reviews that I've made, or of the reviews that you've made, how does somebody look at a list and say, like, hey, what do I want to buy and what's important to me? And that's it's very subjective, but hopefully it's helpful. And yes, have it, use it, make your own. It'd be kind of cool to have a community of sword kind of put your reviews in. I don't know if this would work for everyone or if it has to stay as the mat score, but it'd be neat if I could just give you access to the Google tab and you could put in your ratings. And we could share, or you could use it yourself, but I'll send you a link either way. But yes, use it with my blessing. Let's see. Next is handling. So, and that I separate dynamics, control, and comfort. And when I talk about dynamics, I mean, does it move with intent? Not everything is going to feel lively and wonderful in the hand. Cavalry sabers are known to be a little bit more tip heavy. You might find a kitchen knife on this list. You might find a halberd on the list. And dynamics obviously are going to be fundamentally different. But when I think about it, it's, does it feel like it was built with purpose and intent? And that can be really heavy and need two hands and my full concentration, or it can be like a little fidget spinner that I twirl around. It's my interpretation of how dynamically it should feel versus how it does. Control is another one, and that is my effort to put in how connected to the weapon do I feel, right? So there are things that don't come through over camera or over chat or in a review particularly well, and that is just how connected you feel with a weapon. Loose Ito is a great example of things that can lower this score, right? So you can have a sword that looks like it is, the bee's knees, but if the Ito is loose around and all of a sudden it looks like I'm ice skating while I'm trying to hold onto the handle, that breaks my grip. It makes me feel out of control in the weapon, and that loses, it definitely deters from at least my ability to confidently strike where I want to, or it fatigues me quickly, and I white knuckle it, and I really have to hold on tightly in order to feel like I'm in control of the piece. So that control is something to quantify that, because I feel it's a really important part of the dynamics. They might measure, it might feel great when I move it around in my hand, but then when I actually go to strike things and move it with intent, all of a sudden shit starts coming loose, or it hurts when I move it, or something like that. So something that makes me feel in control. And hurts is actually the comfort side of things. To separate out things that, yes, they are tight and good, but they feel like sandpaper, or they make me bleed, or they hurt me while I move it around, or there's some hot spot or something like that on it. It doesn't mean that it's not a dynamically good weapon. It doesn't mean that it's out of control, but it could be very uncomfortable to move around due to hot spots, due to other thises and that's side of things. Likewise, Cloudhammer comes to mind when I think of their Lazy Boy recliner leather that they wrap around his Ito. It's done tightly. It makes me feel in control of the weapon. It's also very soft and supple on the hand, and kind of fun to hold. So that would be an example of something that I think also deserves some special call outs when I talk about handling. Where am I? LK Chen makes a range of historically accurate Chinese swords, including a lot of military issued ones. I must have missed something. But that is true. I might be missing a conversation here. What is a good place to get Suka rewrapped? My Hishigami are coming out. Frickin' Hanwei. Unfortunately, I don't know of a lot of places. It used to be Loman, Nihonzashi, Cottontail Customs. I'm not sure who in that list is still A, practicing, or B, able to take work right now. Josiah Boomershine is always a good guy to ask and reach out to, though. He can do it all, and so I've mentioned him in a few of my different videos, but I would encourage you to reach out to him. Let's see. What else? Performance. So this other tab up here is around cutting soft, medium, and then abuse targets. I skipped hard and just went to abuse, because cutting logs, sheets of metal, branches, stuff like that, it gets into both hard and abusive territory. So I just called it abuse. And things are going to cut soft things better than medium and then hard. And it's just kind of my perception of how they work. This is maybe important because it may not 100% reflect what I talk about in a video. My perception of it may not be what showed on camera. It might have cut better or worse, and it depends on, all right, well, I guess my thoughts, but hopefully it's supplemented with the video information. So cutting soft, medium, hard targets and how well they cut. One is it batted it around and it was more of a club, and the other is the sword did all the work for me. And so hopefully, well, a lot of these are going to be arguably just related to sharpness, which I also have over here. Hopefully it's interesting enough, because there are nuances as well that some swords will sing through pool noodles and water bottles and then really not do well on tatami. And likewise, some swords will bat water bottles or lighter targets around. You just can't get it to bite into a noodle. But then you go to tatami and it seems to work reasonably well with it. So there are some differences that are worth calling out here, though a lot of it has to do with sharpness, but it's something to call out, I suppose. Durability is another one. How well did it hold up? I can't quantify that all the time with everything, but in a lot of cases I can. Sharpness is another one. There's an edge angle that I'm trying to grab on recent stuff, but this is, again, just my thoughts on how sharp it is. Dull is I can grab the sword and with pressure hold on to it and pull my skin across it and not really worry about it. And really sharp would be I can shave the ink off of paper. Practicality is another one that I put in here, and this is not something that's going to be applicable to swords necessarily, but I think is worth putting in here. So if I everyday carried a sword, how practical would it be? This, because I plan on reviewing other things as well, maybe a little bit more applicable with knives or some of the other things that I put in, but swords are pretty much universally going to get a 1 for everyday carry. Garb is something in the, if I carry it around for temporary things, how obtrusive is it if I'm using it in my class, in a Ren fair, in my costume, in my cosplay, in my whatever. But if I think about dressing up as a temporary time for it, how practical is it to do that with? And some things really suck. They have little ledges that poke out and will grab on things and pull displays down if you walk around a show with them or a Ren fair with them. Likewise, there are things that are very delicate and will fall apart. You know, kojiri might fall off if they're metal. That's been a thing that I've talked about, or pieces that might fall off, and that can be a bummer. But I needed a place to kind of call that out if you're actually going to wear the things around or use them in class. Obviously, there's the class side of things where this is factored in a little bit, but this allows me to specifically call out how practical is it to carry with you and how practical is it to wear temporarily and some of the pitfalls there. And then value. So how many features does it have and how good is it for the money? So features, when I think of like a Jakku, there was a sword that I reviewed for like around $300 that had everything under the sun. It had a rattan side, it had a battle wrap, it had a real semigout, it had a full wrap, it had sanmai construction, it had every different kind of bohi that I could put on it. And so I look at that and it was really feature rich for the money. So I think that those features in particular deserve to be called out. Likewise, there are some very, very rudimentary swords that are still a great value for the money, but basically contain very few things in comparison to their price on the market, but they can still be a good value. And then for the money is just, do I think it's worth it for the money? And this, out of all the things that I put in here, is perhaps the most worthwhile thing. Would I say it's worth the money or not? And so that's what that is. Likewise, value is, do I think it's worth it for the money? not is it a lot of money or is it a little money? But if you spend that money, do I think it's well spent? Is what that's intended to call out. So that is what I've got for the Matt score, and hopefully you will see it. I don't know where I'm going to integrate it into videos, honestly, in the future. I might just note it at the end or put it in the description or link to it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I made the thing. And so if you have ideas, I suppose, let me know. I read that one. Adam Novath. There's another one. Samurai Birds cover in the chat here. Thank you, sir. Do you have a sword or swords you don't want to cut with and would rather keep immaculate, or do you use them all? I certainly have swords that I would rather keep immaculate. Antiques are one. So I have a few antique swords and I don't generally cut with them. I'm not shy about doing EI with them necessarily, but I don't want to whack anything with them. Now, bear in mind that there are, in a Japanese style sword, the polish is art onto itself, right? And so scratching it and diminishing the surface obscures a lot of the little metallurgical details that are brought out by that polish. And getting that polish done again it's not something I can wipe off. It's not something I can buff out. I have to send it off to a competent professional to do it. Josiah is a great guy who does a lot of it. And so, minimum of $1,000 is what I'm going to look at. And if it's an antique and I need something a little bit zazzier done, it could cost thousands of dollars and take years of time to wait in queue to get back. So what that means is that diminishing that polish is like driving a new car off the lot. As soon as I do it, there's an immediate loss of money in what I could ask for that sword were I to sell it, and also an immediate lack of detail or diminishment of the sword that doesn't allow me to appreciate it in the same way. So there are antiques. There are also modern reproduction things that some might think of as tools that I have finished and are pretty. And if I take this, $10,000 sword and cut something with it, well, now it's a $5,000 sword because I can't sell it as a new thing without having it repolished and taking a lot of time to do it. So there are absolutely times where swords are just too expensive and that I don't want to do it. There are also times that swords are wonderful and that I really like them. Black Beauty was a great example of that. It was an absolutely beautiful sword. I cut with it before I had it polished, and it was still kind of sharp when I did, and it was mounted up, so I got a feel for like how it cuts and how it moves. But once it was polished, I sold it, and I didn't actually cut with it, and that's because it's like this is a $10,000 sword, and it's near perfect. It's a beautiful, wonderful sword, but I just can't bring myself to actually use it. So that has absolutely happened. Bird will wrap your handle. Here's some cool sci-fi stuff. I asked about depleted uranium weapons, and the darts tanks use are some sort of grown crystallization process. There may be a future. So maybe in the future, swords can be grown. That'd be kind of neat. It'd be interesting to see what crazy metallurgy or cool science happens to make an old weapon fun with like a modern super version of it. What age did you get your first sword? 5, at least when you mean steel sword. It was not a good steel sword or particularly viable, but it was steel and a sword. I was 5. My parents were horribly irresponsible. A few years ago, they found a 400-year-old sword, old sword blades in a temple in Japan, and then they polished the shit out of them before displaying them in a museum. Shows the difference in metallurgy. Yeah, so that is, I don't know that it's necessarily commonly done with swords outside of Japan, but there are a number of antique Japanese swords, and very often that's one of the differences in thought and how to preserve them with swords not that are of the non-Japanese variety. Polishing them is usually frowned on, or refurbishing them, but Japanese swords still have a kind of a living history and culture of polishing and refinishing the swords and bringing out some of those characteristics for appreciation. So you find a lot of refurbished style Japanese swords out there in museums and whatnot, or in collections, and that are still being polished and done up today. And it's pretty nifty cool. Anyway, I actually caught up with chat. I'm surprised. I suppose that's the perk of having a smaller audience, because you don't plan when you go live and just sporadically do it with 10 minutes notice. But I'm glad it's a conversation small enough that I can keep up with. Anyway, I've gone over the score system. I do want to throw some credit to Doug DeMuro. If it's not evident, he has a Doug score. If you haven't seen Doug DeMuro, he primarily talks about automobiles and has a scoring system at the end that I thought was helpful. And while it's similar but quite a bit different to the one that I put out here, it's structured in a way that's similar. In his reviews, he talks about cars, and so he has some objective things on there, but also says you have cars for fun and you have cars for daily drivers, and those are the two intents that he talks about. And then he has a smaller, more digestible series of measurements to talk about them. And I know he talks about them in his reviews, and it's a part of them that I enjoy anyway. But the idea was to be helpful, and also to maybe contrast for people that are thinking about buying a sword, or thinking about 3 different things I reviewed and how they stack up and where they're better or worse than each other. And so hopefully it will take me some time. I don't talk about it a lot, but I've had 1,000, maybe thousands of swords now, and I've made 500 videos ish. So it's going to take me a minute to populate this list if there's no step 2 or things I need to modify about it. I'm trying to keep the list small in case there's any other growing pains that I have to go through. But it'll take me a while. In the end, though, hopefully it's helpful for doing some sort of comparison of like or similar products for people that can focus and say, yeah, this one is a little bit more comfortable, and that's more important to me than how unique it is, or something like that. If they can compare those two things rather than having to hear me blab on for the better part of an hour. Anyway, that's, if you have thoughts, suggestions, critiques on the MAT score, the criteria, let me know. Likewise, if you'd like to use it or make a derivative of it, do so with my blessing. If it helps, more power to you. And likewise, I personally, it'd be kind of cool if there was not to say that this has to be the list, but if there were a sword reviewer online compendium of things, it'd be kind of neat if Bird, for example, if I could just give you access to the sheet and you would throw in your thoughts on swords using kind of the same scale and logic. And I could put a little thing in there that this is a Bird score and this is a MAT score, but that there'd be a way to keep a list of them with the reviewers. Yeah, I'm not sure. A lot of different ways. What do you guys think? Is there anything useful about lists, or is talking about spreadsheets boring and I should shut up about it already? Given the crickets in the comments, I'm gonna suspect the latter. I am going to suspect that people would rather I be shut up about that I shut up about it already. So I will probably make a video about this, but I thought I could share this. I have cleaned my closet, and while closet organization is not a particularly interesting thing, I thought you all might get a kick out of it before I actually make a video out of it. When I make a video, I will link the products that I used and stuff like that. But more or less, if you've seen my, let me remove this from the stream quick. Let me see if I can find what it looked like before. You don't play audio. Okay. Yeah. So before, this was where I had my swords, and they were in the closet, which is not particularly far away from where I'm filming right now. And I had a safe and I had a bunch of stuff in there, and there was just kind of all leaned against the wall, and it was tough to move around, and I couldn't clean in there either. So I couldn't get at the floor. And so that is not ideal. So where is it? I have got to grab the mute when this thing comes up. So I redid stuff, and I mounted some stuff on the wall, and I got lumber shelves to hold things up. And I found a 5-gallon bucket to put my little sword guy on. I stuck subas around the rim of the door. Anyway, there's all sorts of hangers and stuff that I had at my old house, and then I had to get lumber shelving. So if I come on, pause, there we go. So this stuff is lumber racking, because there are not shelves that hold the amount of swords that I have. And I would like to have less of them, frankly, but it's a good problem to have. The thing is, I bought a lot of swords to make reviews. And then I had the blissful fortune of having sword friends lend me their stuff to review, and vendors send me samples to review. And I always put those in front of my own collection. And that means that, well, I don't get the chance to tell you a lot about the stuff I actually own, which is a great problem. I'm not complaining, but it does mean that I had to find shelving if I want to vacuum. So this is these are lumber racks, and then I took what did I take? I took sword bags that I had and put them over the lumber racks as a little bit of padding between the lacquer and the paint on the lumber racking. And I put that up, and it's held up quite well. So that is another video that I am working on that you will get a chance to see in the not too distant future. And lumber racking, if you have too many swords, is the most cost-effective solution that I've been able to find. In order for me to make something that could hold 5 deep out of wood, it would have taken quite a bit of effort to actually make the rack and then sand it and stain it and and the lumber racks were about $300 on Amazon. So it was less invasive and hard to do, and they're made out of sturdy metal bits, hopefully. Though they're not super ideal, but they're okay. Where the hell was I in chat? Spreadsheets are boring. Yes, sir. Moved on. Both boring and useful. Especially if somebody wants a particular. Well, hopefully it's useful. If you're a sword nerd, you're in the future going to be welcome to peruse it. Closets are cool. I love your videos. Have you ever bought any Hunto from Pablo Kuntz by chance? I like his videos. I have not. I have not bought one from him. But I'm glad you like his videos. If zombies came in, which sword would you choose? The closest one, at least in hopes that I would have clear the room, secure the domicile, and then ready up for a longer one. But immediately I would grab the closest one, and the closest ones are actually above me up here. And I won't pull it out on camera, but I'm also not without a pistol in arm's length at any given time. So that is also that would probably be my first go rather than a sword. Is a little bit more point and click. Any idea of the sword person's maximum ultimate super compendium extraordinaire? You like the idea? Well, I'm glad. It'd be kind of cool to have. There's just an online table of all the people that reviewed swords, and we talked about them or made an effort to talk about them in the same terms. I do want to note, though, that this isn't necessarily that. At least as I can figure, these are the factors the way I see people buying them. But I certainly couldn't blame somebody who really focuses on any one of those aspects or has a broader view than I do, not wanting to use the same list. So, but I would certainly be willing to change it in an effort to standardize. But I'm not sure that I'm not 100% sure if it's possible. Maybe it is, though. Do you own any guns? I don't know. I'm just wondering. Yes, quite a number of them. I don't talk about firearms very much because YouTube doesn't favor it, but more so because I'm not. Like, I actually have stuff to add when it comes to the subject of swords. There are not a lot of people that talk about them. And the amount of people that talk about them don't have a huge amount of overlap. And where there is overlap, there's usually some differences in opinion. When it comes to firearms, though, there's a lot of people that talk about them, that know more about them, that can add to them more than I can. And so I don't generally go into it. But yes, I do own firearms, and I do carry them. It'd be great for higher end stuff, so I don't get to drop $1,000 on a friggin' lion dog and realize it sucks. Yes, that was my experience, though. Adam, that might inspire you to make your own YouTube channel and buy a lot of swords, and then need so many of them you have to buy lumber racks to hold them up. If I were in the USA, I'd rather waste bullets on zombies than a nice. I'd rather waste bullets on zombies than a nice sword, but the zombie sword you made a video on today would be perfect. It would. They really hit it out of the park, the zombie tools, guys. I think the ultimate thing I take away from your videos is the croquet stick of doom is the best weapon for the zombie apocalypse. Alex, that is an astute observation. I've had a few people have, say the same thing in different ways. Like, why don't you make swords out of the croquet stick of doom? Yes, the croquet stick of doom is the ultimate. It is basically a sharp metal rod that would be it's hard to move around. You'll get tennis elbow swinging that thing around. It's also very sharp because swords bite into it and they leave little razor scales on the side. Which is a side note, if you wanted to keep people from taking it away from you and you cleaned up one end, if anyone grabbed it and you twisted it, they would not be particularly happy about grabbing it. RVA sent me a replacement katana. Very nice, much better sword. Thanks for the discussion on all that. I am glad they did. I'm glad you got something. Are you happier with it, Bird? Do you actually like the one that you have now? I know you let out some feels last time we talked about it, and I hope that you, in the end, have a piece that you legitimately like. The good old lead pipe. I don't think it's lead. It's a mild steel. It rusts anyway. But yes, the croquet stick of doom is a hardy and meaty and angry weapon that has been the bane of many swords over time. Much happier. I'm glad to hear it. I have, there's one right over here. This was a sword that Cloudhammer sent me as a gift, not to review. And I have another one to review that I'm working on from Cloudhammer. So John, like a year ago, sent me 4 swords, and I've gradually been working through them. And I have one more, and then I'll get to this one. But I can show it to you a little bit. I do think it's kind of cool. Unfortunately, it's just not the length that I typically use. It's a little bit more on the standard size, but it has a ton of the features that they do well. As an example that I don't have to break and get to hold on to, which I should ask John what it's actually made of as well, because I actually have no idea what steel they used. But it's got these silver fittings, and it's kind of very braggadocious. I happen to like that. It's got a little bit of bling to it, but so much of it grabs my eye that nothing grabs my eye. I like that they put in some taper on the side here. It's a little much. It tapers down a little too much, but it's kind of cool. It also has this habaki that Cloudhammer puts on things, and it's got this wave pattern, and coupled with the kind of wave dragon theme on it, it looks pretty cool. And it also, it's maybe not coming through super well, but it has a relatively sizable okasaki on it. So it's not one that I've actually gotten a chance to spend a whole lot of time with yet, because I've been practicing with tons of other swords to review. But they sent me this one, and it's all sorts of cool, and I really, really like it. And unfortunately, like I said, it's just not, I'd actually be practicing with it more at the moment. I lack for a sword that is the size that requires me to move my hips. So I need a sword that's like 30 inches plus in order to demand that I do Sayabiki properly. And when Sayabiki, for the folks that I don't have a Saya handy that I wouldn't potentially cut myself. But basically, if you're doing Japanese style swordsmanship and you are drawing the sword and don't want to just stand with, square to your opponent, draw the sword and have it come out and be pointing without moving any of your core. Sayabiki means that I have to pull this scabbard back with my other hand, kind of cock it a little bit, and then turn it and pull it behind me. And that allows me to pull the extra length to deploy a longer sword, or a sword of my size, or a sword equivalent to what a Japanese style person studying this art, hundreds of years ago would have had to do. And not many of the swords that I have or own are that size. And unfortunately, many of the samples that I get sent are also not that size. So as I'm training, I usually get to use like a cheater. So anyway, Cloudhammer sent me that sword though, and I will get a chance to talk about it in the, hopefully, probably not near future, but sometime. You'll get tennis elbow doing Iaido with a freaking lying dog. Yes, they are heavy, though I have seen people do EI with a lion dog before. The lion dog, when I reviewed that sword, I remember thinking, who on earth would want to use this for EI or some of the kind of practical arts? And there is a guy in Katori, of all things, which usually tends to favor a little bit more lively swords, moving a lion dog around, swinging this big honking heavy sword around, doing very fast jumping, aggressive movements with it. And he says he likes to train with it. So some people do, but I would say that it's certainly not for everyone. I don't enjoy moving it around particularly. I'm proud to say I own the new one. Can't say that that before. Cheers to John. Yeah. Cheers to John. Well, I'll do that. Have you seen the newer Dragon King folded steel katana? KOA has a few. I'm curious. Their slightly higher end swords have been fun to use. I have one called the. Oh, I'm not even going to try. It looks fun. I do think at least the Dragon swords or the Dragon King swords that I've had have been generally pretty good. I've liked them for their budget, but I haven't had many of their higher end and I don't think I've even had any of their folded swords. I'd like to play with more. I think basically they have the same pros and cons as Hanwei. They seem to fit things uniquely. They seem to also have different shapes than everyone else. So a lot of the swords, if I think about, many of the other mass production swords companies out there tend to have very similar shapes. And if you think about the scabbards, a lot of them fit into similar scabbards and they kind of pull from the same parts bins. Dragon King seems to make a little bit different shape. They seem to make their own scabbards. They seem to make fittings for that model of things. And I do like that. I like the uniqueness element of it. I like the art behind it. And I like some of the stories they tell with their fittings. At the same time, they've had, mediocrely wrapped handles and ripples on the surface of the steel and things like that. So I don't know if that's always the case, but they seem to basically be a mirror of Hanwei for pros and cons anyway. So if you like what Hanwei has put out, I would speculate you're probably going to be happy with the Dragon King stuff as well. But admittedly, I've had fewer things from them to look at. Holy fuck, you got your haircut. It looks awesome. Well done, sir. Well, I didn't do it, but thank you. I will take all the credit for it. I definitely did not get a cut in a fire truck. At the beginning, I elaborated on my haircut. You will get to hear the story if you are keen on it. Dudes just got off and here to talk. Well, welcome, Outlaw. Glad you're here. Can we talk about the Viking sword pommel thing, you guys? What's the beef? I don't get it. I have a few Viking swords. I never really had a problem. Matt Easton's grip works excellent. I wish I could give you a great answer. Let me go get a prop. I'm gonna exit camera left and hopefully find where I put this stupid thing. No. The downside of cleaning is you don't know where you put anything. I have no idea where I put the hilt of the Viking sword. Salavi. Well, I don't have it handy, unfortunately, because I would like to use it as a prop. But I first want to admit it is user error, okay? Many people seem to find comfort. I'm sure it's me being a bitch. I just can't hold it. I move my grip around. I've tried holding it differently. I haven't tried twisting the pommel off center so that I use the sword as it came. I didn't modify it in such a way where I twist the handle or twist the pommel off center so that it hits the flub of my hand differently. But if I hold it in a hammer grip and try not to kind of bend at the wrist and use my shoulder and elbow a little bit for striking, it doesn't work particularly well for me, and it still whacks me in the meat of the hand. If I hold it in a handshake grip, regardless of where I hold it, basically, as I understand how to use swords, no matter which grip or how I try to hold the thing, I can't get it to be good. There are varying degrees of bad, but that's what all of the grips on Viking swords to me feel like. I'm not a huge fan of wheel pommels, incidentally, either, for the same reason, but to a lesser extent. They don't feel good on my hand. And so all of it feels like some sort of mediocre substitute for what it could be. If they just broke the pommel off, I'd almost like it more. And that's unfortunate. So I would love to be a convert. A few folks have sent me reading material or other videos to watch and some stuff to try out. And I will have to do that. I don't have another Viking sword at the moment. I don't actually. I don't own an example not to break. All the ones that I did have a Castle Keep one. I sold that a while ago after I reviewed it. But I don't have another Viking sword actually around to try the techniques. But at some point I will have to get one and try again, because I love the way they look. Don't get me wrong. Looks are, they're kind of a showstopper, but I for whatever reason, I cannot get them to feel good in my hand or comfortable. At best, I can hang on to them and be along for the ride, but rarely do I enjoy the experience. Anyway, hopefully that answers. I do just want to, hopefully it's evident by what I'm calling out. It is my problem. People use these for hundreds of years, very competent warriors. I have no doubt that it is me being unable to use it as intended and not, I'm not calling foul on the sword. I can't get it. It might be as well because I have big, stupid sausage hands too, but supposedly so did they. So anyway, all right, Outlaw. All right, I'll keep nursing this. Cheers. Cheers, and thank you for the super chat. What's your favorite non-standard katana geometry? Favorite is a tough one. They all look really neat and cool. But I would say there is a certain elegance about it in the Kobe Zukuri geometry, that kind of cut down naginata, lots of different geometric shapes happening along the spine and then swelling out to the tip. And yeah, those can be really, really quite spectacular looking. At the same time, when I think of like a Hirazukuri geometry blade, those are obscure and not super common as well. I happen to like that, but I would say the Unokobe is probably geometrically just very pleasing. There's a lot going on. It's hard to do exceptionally well, and a lot of craftsmanship and detail can come out there. And they also tend to feel, like dainty things. All right, I'm hearing little guy. No, not quite. Okay, got a little bit more time. Side thing, I've got camera so I can see if baby is waking up. But if I have to leave sporadically, that is what's up. I'm not abandoning you because I hate your face. Or faces, I should say, to the crowds of people. I can't see your faces, so I don't know if I hate them, but I'd imagine I do. So Ramble. That's what happens when you get me to drink too much, Outlaw. I think you should, I should mail you one or two to play with so you can do on video. They seem to never have reviews, and my channel is crap. People should know where their $700 is going. Well, I would be happy to help out. Let's collab. Smack some swords around. Have you ever bought bare blades and made your own sword? Made I'm guessing you mean made my own sword? I've bought bare blades and had them finished. Yes, there's a series of projects that I've done on there's a playlist of projects that I've done where I get a bare blade. I don't do it. I want to point that out. I don't do anything. I tried making a handle once, and I wasn't sure whether to hold it or sit on it. But that's a dick joke for those of you that missed it. But the basic gist is that I suck at making things. I'm not particularly good at it, and I would rather invest the time in making videos and searching for swords and doing that kind of stuff than improving my craft. So I understand I can, but I'm just not in it to win it in that way. But I have gotten bare blades and then sent them off to the appropriate people to have the blade polished and then a sign made and so on and so forth. And there's a number of them that I've had done, but I haven't ever put it together myself, so to speak. That's for Bird. Made your own sword. Oh, I guessed right. Sweet. Stent stopper pommel would make a good Viking sword pommel. There's even though the scent stopper-esque or the Viking light pommels seem to still not feel great to me. I'm gonna keep trying. It's a sword, I gotta keep trying. I'm especially because I know it's me. I know historically people move these things around. There must be a way that it felt okay to do so over the course of a long battle and not a series of 3 chops and then say like, ow, this hurts. So there's got to be something. I'm going to keep trying. I've recently got into historical rapier fencing. So if you're interested for more on the channel, I would not complain. Well, I don't have any rapiers at the moment. I do have a small sword and a side sword and a broadsword that I have yet to review. So at some point you will see those when I get around to actually talking about my own property. But actually, quick note, because you're here, the cold stool. That's a Freudian slip, right? The cold steel small sword, don't like it. It's neat looking, but I don't happen to like it very much. The Hanwei broadsword or basket hilted broadsword is way more fun feeling than I would have expected. It has a little bit of rattle when I move it around, but that guard doesn't actually bite into my hands, surprisingly. I thought it would as I was swinging it around, but it hasn't yet, and it feels like it would be really painful to get punched in the face with, and the blade is very nimble and light and feels great and has some coolness to it, so I like that one. And the Kingston Arms side sword, or like town guard-esque sword, that like proto-rapier looking thing, don't like it. I don't like it. I have to make a whole review about it. I've tried. I deleted it twice. I didn't, but yeah, I don't like it. So there's that. I'll get to actually making it well eventually, but yeah, that's the pokey ones that I have around at the moment. That's for Bird. All right. It's Dark Souls of Swords. Once you get it, you're like, oh shit, it's not so hard and it's fun. It's a fun challenge. That's fair. Fun Dark Souls story. A friend of mine said, hey, you're a glutton for punishment. You will like Dark Souls. And he lent me a controller and he bought me the Prepare to Die edition of Dark Souls. And I was like, okay. I was playing, I think, World of Warcraft or something at the time, or was getting off of it. I can't remember exactly which, but I tried Dark Souls and I had heard it was hard. And I basically, for hours, he told me how hard it was, but how like cool the art style was, and how yada, yada, yada. So anyway, the long and the short of it is I played Dark Souls and I beat the first boss on with this broken sword. You get a broken sword and you whack him to death and you have to jump and bob and weave and do all this stuff. And it took hours and hours and hours to kill this boss with this little nubbin of a sword. And and then the boss drops this hammer that you can't use. And I was like, well, what the hell is this game even? I just got so sick of it. And then I walked off to the next thing, I guess took a wrong direction and died. And so I was telling him about it after I came back. He's like, so what do you think of Dark Souls? And I was like, I beat the boss with this little nubby thing. And it's the worst tutorial I've ever had. I got to bob and weave and I got pretty good at it, but it took so long. And he's like, you beat the first boss with the broken sword? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, that's, I don't know, some sort of achievement or hard mode thing. He's like, you're supposed to like go in the one door that's there, find a good sword, and then jump and take half the boss's health off by jumping on his head and then kill him. And it's like not that hard. And I was like, there's a door? So yeah, my disdain for Dark Souls began with doing the first boss and beating it on hard mode, and that was the first experience I had with Dark Souls. And I did try it a few other times after that, but I never really quite got into it. But yes, it's not beyond me to beat my head against something because it's supposed to be. But I was like, I remember sitting there like, this is so hard. Like, I knew it was hard, but God, I would, like, is it better to slam my testicles into a sliding glass door? That seems like it would be more fun. I'm not sure how many times I tossed his controller, but I think I had to buy him a new one. Anyway, also, Bird, moving on to better topics. Just got the Murasame L6. Have you cut stuff with it yet? Is it holding up well? Ian, Sword Friend Ian. Cheers to you, sir. Cheers. Ian, so Mr. Epi is Sword Friend Ian, who is the gracious donor of very, very many of the God, why can't I think of the word? The messers that I have reviewed on my channel. So special thanks to you, sir. Thank you for the super chat. And just as a side note, in organizing the closet that I put out, I recently put up some lumber shelving to put swords on because I'm a classy guy. One of them that stands out that I just love picking up is the messer that you had made for me that Adam put some detailing on. I picked that thing up quite a bit, and it's just one of my favorite things to move around. So again, I know I said it in the video, but thank you again for that. It's still bringing me joy to this day to move around. Drunk ramble time, Matt. Now I just need a sword for him to talk about. Yeah, that's a thing I do. It is not hard. Could you suggest a good site where I could get bear blades? There's honestly not really. Unfortunately, bear blades, the ones that I've been fortunate enough to find, have been on like Sword Buyer's Guide, Sword Form International, Craigslist, eBay. But that's usually where I find them, and it's often a person that bought it with the intention of finishing the project, and then it's just kind of given up on it due to time, expense, or whatever got in the way of life. So I don't see them very often, but there are some folks that you could reach out to get good sword, like Rado sword. I've never bought one from him, but I love his work. I think he does great stuff. Pavel Wolf, I'm not sure what the status on him is, but I know some people had trouble getting things out of him, but then he started back up again. I'm not sure, but he also makes some pretty good looking swords. And then keep a look and your eyes peeled on eBay. Otherwise, bear blades in the Chinese market, there's a few of them. I'm sure Jason Yoon at Motohara would sell you a bear blade. I'm not sure, but he might sell you a bear blade as well. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't know a great place to get bear blades. It's kind of happenstance, having cash on hand and being first to the party. You may not be good at making things, but you are good at destroying them. Thanks. Like your marriage. Yeah. I've got a particular set of skills. Almost any company will send a blank. Yes, many of them will. As I think of blanks, I was thinking, I guess, the higher end side of things instead of, but a lot of sword companies out there will sell you a bear blade. So the JQs and many of the sword companies that I've reviewed, you can reach out to them and they'll probably be able to get you a simple sword or a blank. The Hanway Kaywood. It's a Scottish Viking style. I think I remember what that looks like. It's like a migration era style piece, I think. Pommel similar to the Caithness. I do remember the Caithness. That was a Viking sword that did not hurt me as much, but I was still pretty eager to sell it when I was done with it. But they are Viking-esque, and they are better. They don't hurt as much. That's kind of the trick, though, is that I also don't particularly like wheel pommels, right? So as I think of swords that bite my hand, I really prefer a scent stopper pommel or something like that, a fishtail pommel. Those tend to be the ones that allow the fat of my hand to move around. I also have a reasonably good grip, and so it might be that I don't know, there's a lot of meat there to rub into, and I happen to be more predisposed to being a sensitive little ninny about it. I personally purchased 3 blades from Bohayu and built them myself. Not easy. Bird is a man who's in it to win it, though. He likes to customize stuff and wrap things, and he's got capability as a tradesman. I do computer stuff and math, and none of that seems to help me when I come to file work. But good on you, Bird. It's not for me. I purchased a few from the site. The last one I got was jacked up, and I had to send it back. Bummer to hear, man. Speaking of Dark Souls, have you ever tried Nioh or Nioh 2 or Ghost of Tsushima? No, I have not. Nioh was one I was thinking about getting, but it was always like $40, and I never justified buying it. It looked really cool, though, but I didn't. I did try Dark Souls 2 and 3 and subsequently did not make it through either one. Ghost of Tsushima, I have not purchased or got, which is odd. I have a PlayStation, and then I get it, and I never ever play it. But it looks really cool. I won't lie that it looks great, and people say really good things about it. Going back to video games, though, because this is a part of my life that I do really enjoy, and I play a lot of video games. I primarily play Rocket League and Apex Legends, and I've stopped streaming on Twitch. Not a lot of people join me over there. Not that I won't ever do it again, but I don't know how useful it is to continue that. But I play some 3D kind of multiplayer games, and then when I play games like myself for fun, the twitchy games like Dark Souls are maddening to me, and I need a little bit more chill. So XCOM, despite the fact that it can be a grind and relentless, is hard. Civilization, RimWorld. I haven't tried Dwarven Fortress, but I might try that soon. But I tend to gravitate away from like the twitchy stuff. Most of that is satisfied now with like an Apex Legends or like a 3D shooter or something like Rocket League, where I have to twitch and do a thing with whoever I happen to be playing with. So those are fun, but I find myself like the adventure games, I don't play so much myself anymore. When another good one comes out, like Baldur's Gate 3, I might stream some of that on Twitch and talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, Divinity Original Sin, Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous, some of those RPG games I have played, but a lot of times like the Neos, the Ghost of Tsushima, the adventure games, the Witcher was one that I played all the way through, but I haven't played those. And I haven't had like the urge to do it, because usually I need something with a pause button that I don't have to, like, mentally I can pause from. I haven't used Sword yet. I'm still doing physical therapy. Soon, Bird Cerny will use that L6 and swing it around. I kept at it. Max level. I don't know if you're talking, Sinister, I don't know if you're talking about using Viking swords or playing Dark Souls, but either way, good on you. Thank you. I don't know what happened to Musashi after he won his final duel when he sailed off. I thought he went to a monastery. I'm not sure, though. Not for me. Not sure if this would be considered a rude question or if it has been previously answered, but Matt, what is the thing that you do for a living? It's not rude. Hopefully not. I guess it could be, depending on what I do for a living, but I don't think of it as rude. I do supply chain stuff. So I manage a supply chain of things for a large retailer. I'm not particularly hard to find. I try not to say it on my YouTube channel because I like to keep those two things separately. It's not exactly a secret, though, or not something I'm ashamed of, but you'll have to do some investigative journalism if you want to find out exactly where by Googling my name, because I'm smart and I post things under my real name. But more or less, I manage a supply chain of things, and that's why you hear me talk about packaging and some of that side of stuff, because my brain goes that direction by nature. But that is what I do, and I talk about packaging, and I do forecasting and demand planning and all that kind of stuff for a day job. And it's a hoot. I have no complaints. It's kept me fed for a long time. It's kept it interesting. I get to talk to folks overseas that do a very different thing quite a bit and solve problems, and it's a good place. Good job. No complaints. Do you ever think of reviewing more varied blades? I know you think you do, but don't know much about other types of blades besides Japanese. But that doesn't seem to stop other sword content creators. Well, I do try to mix it up. It is largely dependent on what I'm able to get for review samples or what I have in my collection, and also what I have in my collection that is useful to review. So there are some things that I have that are obscure styles of swords that you can't buy anymore and aren't particularly interesting. So I don't review them, but I just reviewed a zombie apocalypse sword. I'm going to review a few other katanas. There's a Kriegsmesser coming up. There's been a few other messers, courtesy of Sword for Ian. There was a Hallstatt fantasy-esque inspired sword. I do have some sabers to talk about. I talked about a Chinese Jian. I've talked about a number of other Chinese swords, but it seems to be like 50% of the content is probably katana related, and then 50% is every other thing in the world that I might happen across. But yes, I do try to talk about them, and I do try to vary it up because I have so many Japanese style swords. I try to do Japanese sword, then something else, Japanese sword, then something else. So hopefully the variation is noticeable, and hopefully you like it, but I'm trying. How is the new improved version of Anathar been treating you? Well, hopefully, well, I'm not sure how many people watched it. Anathar has been going down. I still enjoy making it. People seem to like it, but it is not a particularly successful video given the amount of work that goes into it. That said, it's hilarious. Anathar, I was hoping to get it and break it again, but time didn't work out. So, well, I haven't swung it around. I haven't hit anything with it. I've only taken it out of the box and filmed some stuff with it, and then it will be broken, and we'll see. And so hopefully, don't want to put too many spoilers in, but I plan on using Anathar, and then I plan on using Anathar in my typical fashion, and it'd be fun to see who else might be interested in the saga of Anathar. Who else might be able to fix it? Who else wants to sign up? Because I'm sure Chris has had his fill with Anathar. He did a great job, though. Incidentally, Chris Fields at Sterling Armory is a good sport. He makes some awesome swords, and if you haven't seen them, Sterling Armory, he does some good stuff. I made some reviews on them. He makes a variety of stuff, and he gets my thumbs up. But he also was a good sport, and just for the love of it, because he enjoyed the Anathar stuff, wanted to do it. But that was some work that he put into it, and I appreciate his time. And it was a lot of fun to do. And so, cheers to him. If you've enjoyed him, he has a YouTube channel, Sterling Armory. He sells swords under Sterling Armory, and so you should go check him out. I always love the vids. You inspire me. Thank you. Those are very kind words to say. I'm glad. I hope you make some cool sword reviews yourself. What made you cut your hair? It's not what, but who, and that is my wife. And she likes me looking this way, and I like her looking at me. So that's metaphor for marriage. I know I talk mostly about sword reviews, but if you want some marriage advice, growing your hair out for 3 years when your wife is opposed to it is probably not the strongest for relationship building, but cutting it off is good. And do what you can to keep your wife happy. She prefers me looking this way. I'm happy to look that way, and I'm glad that she let me grow my hair out. I never thought I would have long hair again, so I'm glad I got to take some Vikings photos with a Viking sword before I did, looking all homeless and Viking-ish. Do you have an experience with blacksmithing? No, not myself personally. I have never made anything via Forge. Be fun to check out sometimes. Arms and Armor once had like a dagger making class. If they ever do that again, I'd be really tempted to check it out. But it'd be fun to make something. But I have not. And usually the classes don't align with my schedule, or are more than I can muster at the time they come up. New subscriber found out about you from Schologram's channel. Are you a fan of magical fantasy books or other mediums? Yes, I am a big nerd. If that's what you're asking. In terms of fantasy books and other mediums, I'm not particularly well read, but bear in mind I'm dyslexic, so reading for me is hard, and it was really hard to do for pleasure for a very long period of time. And thanks to Shad, actually, who turned me on to Brandon Sanderson and said he reads some stuff about swords, and I'd struggled to find a book that I liked enough to read for pleasure. And the way Brandon Sanderson writes was very instrumental in me picking up a book that I enjoyed reading for fun, and that incorporated fantasy and swords and stuff like that. So I've read a lot of Brandon Sanderson's work, and I'm on he did a giant Kickstarter, which you might have heard of, where he raised like $30 million or something, but that's less the point. He's just a fun author, I think of him a little bit as like a PG-13 George R. R. Martin. If you don't know about his work, because it hasn't been in movie or film so much. But yeah, he's very enjoyable. I really like his style of writing. I enjoy reading it, and so I'm on his Secret Project 2, which came out not too long ago, and I'm making my way through that. And I really enjoyed his last Triss in the Emerald Sea. I've read up on Stormlight Archive. I've read up on the Mistborn Saga 2, or the second era. But yeah, most of his books, I haven't read his graphic novels. There are some things that I haven't picked up, but the majority of Brandon Sanderson's works I've read, and that was courtesy of Shad talking about it. Honestly, that inspired me to pick it up, and then another one, and he's a very prolific writer, so there's been a lot of reading. And then because I ran out of novels from Brandon Sanderson for a minute, Joe Abercrombie, I started reading A Little Hatred, which has got some magic in it, but I've just finished the second book of the Little Hatred series. So I started reading that. I tried Wheel of Time. I couldn't do it. It was hard for me to read at night, and I'll try it again though. I want to give Wheel of Time another go. And what else did I read? Those are mostly what I've read, aside from bedtime stories for my kids and stuff. But it's been a lot of Brandon Sanderson, a little bit of Joe Abercrombie, if that counts. Otherwise, yeah, I like fantasy movies. I like nerdy stuff, generally speaking. So those are the things that I read. And at the moment, I'm reading The Secret Project 2. You're very happy and welcome. You've taught me so much. And yes, happy wife equals happy life. It certainly, it doesn't hurt. That's for sure. Happy life, happy hobo with a Viking sword. That is what I did look like. Absolutely. I like Sanderson as well. He's a machine. I think he's published like 30 books in less than 10 years. He's also puts a lot of thought into his lore. He does. He's a fun guy. I very much enjoy his style of writing. For me, the way he writes, not that I can necessarily quantify why it is, but for some reason I'm able to digest the material that he writes in a way that is enjoyable, which is a struggle for me. It's hard for me to read. It's always been a chore, and at the same time something that I always wanted to improve on. And so at some point I picked up a Sanderson book, and for some reason I really like the stories that he tells, but his methodology of writing is very palatable for the way my brain interprets words. So for some reason he's what I try to sit down and read every night, or I have for a long time. It's surprising that I read through all of his books, though. I read through, I don't know that I followed a great reading order, but I read Mistborn Era 1, then I read up through the Stormlight Archive, then I did some of the other things. I read The Reckoners. I think that's what they're called, but his superhero ones, the Skyward series I've read a lot of Brandon Sanderson books, but they've always entertained me, despite the fact that they branch a lot of different genres. Granted, being fantasy, but they've always managed to entertain me and always managed to be digestible in my brain. Every time I switch authors and try to read another thing, it's a little bit of getting used to and can be a little bit uncomfortable. But I've read enough Sanderson that maybe my brain is strengthened a little bit, and I'm able to read a few others. Hi, Matt. Roger Zangley's 9 Princes in Amber is a really good series. Very cool writing style. Audiobooks are well done. I'm gonna take a quick note on that. Am I? What's that? I'm too drunk, can't type. So many C's. All right, I'm going to check that out later. I've got some Sanderson to get through, but I'm kind of committed to reading the next Little Hatred, the third in the series from Joe Abercrombie. and then whatever 3 novels Brandon Sanderson has finished by the time I'm done reading that. But then I'm on the hunt for something else before I have to try the Wheel of Time again. So I will check that out. Thank you for answering. I got to go. Sending positive vibes. Thank you very much. Not the easiest to get into, but if you like historical fiction, The Naval Times I highly recommend by Patrick O'Brien and Aubrey Martin series. Another one to check out. Let me take a quick note. I'm always looking for good books. Well, not always. The thing about like starting reading really late in life, at least for enjoyment, is that there's like a ton of really amazing content out there to read. And it's like if you've never watched a movie before because you're like, no, looking at stuff is too hard. Which honestly may be the case. Like so many people now watch YouTube and watch things for like 1 to 10 minutes at a time. And you're like, no, there's this 2-hour medium that has existed for a very long time that has all sorts of good stuff on it. And like 2 hours, that's so long to like not concentrate. So there, that may actually be a thing. But for me, I started pretty late, and there's just a ton of amazing books out there that I don't know about and stories I haven't heard, which is really a shame. So for folks that I hope Brandon Sanderson's work starts coming to the screen soon, because he's got some really good stories. It seems like they keep remaking the same things over and over and over again. But just from the one guy that I've read a lot of, there's like a ton of original content and stories and things that I would love to take my family to the theater and watch, and that we could all enjoy, like legitimately. There's stuff in there for my wife and for me and for my daughter, and I'm sure my son would revel at some of the worlds that Brandon Sanderson creates, even though he's pretty young. But no, we're going to get a remake of some of the same stuff instead. His Master and Commander series, however, I warn you, it is in period English. Well, that will be tricky. We'll see what I can do. My brain struggles with Robert Jordan, so we'll see. It's not that I can't muscle through it, but reading at the moment for me, I have to do a lot of it at work and emails, and I can read. You've been seeing me reading text poorly throughout the course of this stream, but I can read. But at night, like for enjoyment, I definitely have to, like, my brain's got to register with it. I'll give it 100 pages or so. Like I'll try in a big book, especially if people say that it's worth it and really go for it. But eventually, if it doesn't like catch on and I'm not enjoying it and it's work, then I got to switch up. I was actually happy I found Abercrombie. It took a little bit to adjust to, but I have enjoyed his style of writing. It's a little bit grittier, but I've enjoyed the way he's told the story and kind of the world he's built in the Little Hatred series. Anyway, it is about time for me to skedoodly poop. My little guy, for some reason, is still sleeping, but it is time for me to wake him up from nap time and get on with the day. So I'm gonna call it here and stop. I appreciate everyone who has stuck around and has kept the conversation lively. Thanks for listening about zombie tools and about my haircut and about the MAT score. And hopefully it was good conversation and entertaining. But I'm going to call it here. Thanks, everyone. Cheers, and thanks for watching.